Hello and welcome. Joining me in studio is Carolyn Stern. She is a certified emotional intelligence and leadership development expert and author of The Emotionally Strong Leader. Her courses have been adopted by top universities in North America, and she's provided training programs to business leaders across the continent, including areas such as tech, finance, education, and healthcare. We're going to discuss emotional intelligence and how it can be used in finances and investing. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's just start. What is emotional intelligence?
Well, emotional intelligence is being intelligent about your emotions. It's having the mental skills to prevent your emotions from having undue influence over their actions.
All right, now this is a term that has been gaining in popularity. I've heard it in several areas now. People are talking about using it in different industries, as you've done the courses and across the those other areas that you've touched on in finance, tech, and whatnot. What is the importance of EI in the financial industry?
Well, one, it makes you more aware of what you're feeling and how your feelings might be impacting how you're making decisions about your finances. So do you have a mental model of scarcity? Are you concerned about, do you have low emotional regulation? Do you let your impulse control guide your decision making? Or do you make rash decisions, or do you take too long to make a decision? And I think also just in terms of, communicating with your financial advisors, if you can't stay calm under pressures and not knowing, uncertainty, how is that affecting your relationships with your financial advisors in terms of how you are investing your money?
Right, and things like FOMO.
Yes.
FOMO is a huge thing in the financial industry.
Yes. The fear of missing out. Yes, absolutely. And I think, are you making rash decisions? So do you feel like, I've got to purchase this stock because if I don't, the fear of missing out, I want to make sure, I do what everyone else is doing. Or, I think also, you've got to figure out emotions versus rational thinking. There's a balance between being not letting your emotions cloud your objectivity, even understanding your emotional state when making a decision. Like, are you even aware of how you're feeling when you're making those decisions?
Now, if we can just discuss sort of what is EI and EQ.
Okay, so EI stands for emotional intelligence, right? And so that's used, and EQ is used interchangeably with EI. But what EQ really is emotional quotient. So it is basically measuring your emotional intelligence, just like your IQ measures your cognitive intelligence, your EQ measures your emotional intelligence.
All right, and emotional intelligence is gaining popularity. People are using it in all kinds of different industries. What is the importance of EI in the financial industry?
Well, I think number one, you really need to figure out what you're being emotionally aware of. What are your thoughts? What are your beliefs behind money? Investing, are you someone like me that has a bit of a scarcity mindset? I'll be honest. So I tend to be a little bit more risk adverse. And whereas you might be someone who takes a lot of risk. So just knowing our emotion, being more emotionally aware of what's going on internally, because we're like a lot of like an iceberg. What you see is what's immediately apparent. You see my communications, you see my actions, but what you don't see are all the things underneath the iceberg, the things that impact my communications and actions, my fears, my motivators, my stressors, my concerns, my assumptions, my biases. All of these things are below the surface, and those impact how we communicate and behave.
Right. And for example, crypto at this point, or in the last little while, has started to surge and it's gone up. And there's people with FOMO, with that decision of, I should get in, and then, want to jump in, and then it crashes, or whatever those things are, but then it comes back up again. So you're kind of in this like little bit of a roller coaster sometimes with these things. How does EI help with that sort of FOMO?
Yes. Well, it's about emotional regulation, right? And so you've got to figure, where are you on the continuum? So on impulse control, are you someone who takes forever to make a decision, or are you someone who makes rash decisions? So figuring out where you are on the continuum can kind of help you figure out, okay, am I someone who's going to make a rash decision, or am I someone that needs to regulate my emotions to figure out, okay, maybe I need to press pause between if crypto is going up and I want to jump on that bandwagon, maybe I need to pause for a minute and not invest. So one of the techniques I teach is called the high EI way. So it's 5 steps. It's recognize, so notice what you're feeling, reflect on where that feeling came from, so what triggered that feeling, regulate, and that's all about leaving space between the emotion and the trigger, and the response and the impact. So creating space, pressing the rest and digest response like a brake pedal.
Yes.
And then reset, calm down, gain perspective. Is your reality the reality, or is it just how you're seeing things from your perspective? And then finally, then respond. So it's after you do those 4 steps that you might make a decision, or you might communicate and say something. So it's really taking a beat, taking a breath, and figuring out before you respond, so that you're smarter than your emotions. You're not letting your emotions be in the driver's seat of your feelings, but you are in the driver's seat of your emotions.
Which can be a thing, especially when you're, doing investments, and sometimes you're just like, oh, that's good, you got to get it now. You have to go in and take advantage of this, and maybe it's just good to take a breath and see. And then there's also information. So when you find something that looks like a good idea and you're not sure and you want to take some time to get some more information, at what point in your stages, so you're emotionally regulating, but then when are you the best to sort of like take in some more information to help make your decision along that process?
Well, one of the skills that we teach is decision making, and this is a big part to investing. So there are 3 skills that specifically we teach. The first one is problem solving. So are you good at solving problems when emotions are involved? So are you even aware of your emotional state when solving problems? The second is called reality testing. So do you live in La La Land, or are you aware of how your assumptions and your biases are clouding your objectivity? So maybe you have, you mentioned FOMO. So maybe you have a fear of missing out, and that's clouding your objectivity of what is the right thing to do for you. And the third is, which we've already talked about, is impulse control. Are you someone who is able to resist temptation and create a space between you just reacting and what you're feeling?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then on the other side of it, people that do make decisions calmly, but then say it doesn't go well. Something didn't go out the way that they were hoping. I guess you can apply the same thing.
Absolutely. This is why I say there are 4 steps before you actually open your mouth. Because what happens if you're really upset that you invested in something and you take it out on your partner or your financial advisor, right? Like, you've got to learn how to be emotionally expressive, which is being able to express how you feel in a constructive way, and being assertive, which is sharing what you think or your opinions in a non-offensive way. And so you need to learn to cool your jets, and don't let one moment in time define who you are forever.
All right, now, can people get better at this?
Yes. Unlike your IQ, which peaks at 18, your EQ can rise as you get older. And in fact, one study says it peaks in our 60s. So hopefully for the majority of us, there's hope. But I think, like anything, it's about balance. It's figuring out, there is a dark side to emotional intelligence. So much of the literature talks about, high EI. But sometimes you can be too high at something. So, for instance, if I am empathetic, we talked earlier off camera about empathy. Caring about what other people think. Well, too much empathy is I can get enmeshed in people's stuff. I can wear your emotional burdens on my shoulders. So it's figuring out when you've swung too far or not far enough. And so it is about balance. Yes, you can enhance your emotional intelligence, but just like building your muscles at the gym, it takes work.
Right.
It's not difficult, but it's not also that easy, right? Like, so people always say to me, I struggle with independence. I care too much about what people think. And people always say to me, well, just stop caring what people think. Well, yes, but that's hard, right? So, it's just like if you struggle with being a rash decision maker, cooling your jets before you make a decision. These are not hard things to do, but it's not easy to do them. Like, it's not rocket science is what I'm trying to say.
But awareness and practice.
Awareness is key. You got to know what problem you're trying to solve. And the first is understanding your emotional makeup. So where are you high? Where are you low? Where are you somewhere in the middle?
How do you know if you're doing better?
How do I know?
How do you know how do you know personally if you're doing better, if you've kind of gotten it?
I think
You've improved your EI.
Well, I think a lot of this comes from internal, right? To figuring out what you're feeling inside. Like, you know yourself if you're being your best you. The byproduct of emotional intelligence is happiness. So if you're a happier person, chances are you're probably getting better. But in terms of your relationships with others, do you have conflict in your life? Are you able to resolve difficult conversations? You know, people always say to me, what does emotional intelligence have to do with business? Well, let me ask you, do you have people at work right now that are people pleasers? Is there anyone reluctant to, give feedback? Do you have people, struggling with handling change or the unfamiliar? Do you have employees that are, afraid to have a difficult conversation? These are all the reasons. Everything that I just mentioned is related to emotional intelligence. And the only way you can get better at it is to work those muscles.
To work those EI muscles.
Yes.
All right. And finally, now you have an EI course. So for people that want to maybe get better.
Yes.
Could that be something people can access to gain, development in emotional intelligence that can be applied when they're investing?
Yes, absolutely. So we have actually a series of online courses on emotional intelligence, one specifically on decision making. So absolutely, you can go on training.eiexperience.com and you can find all of our courses online.
And is it just a work through it at your own pace?
Yes. So we have self-directed learning, so people can do it at their own pace, or they can call us at eiexperience.com and we can come in and do either live training, virtual training. We also do emotional intelligence coaching. So I work with a lot of executives on if, figure out, are you having social problems, at work? Are you a leader that's all about task and less about people? Well, the world's changing now. That's, that old way of leadership isn't working anymore. So people bring me in either to work with their leaders to figure out if they're having interpersonal relationship problems at work, if they're not being able to give feedback, if they're a bit too harsh and need to work on their empathy, lots of reasons, if they're not handling stress or change very well. These are the types of things that I work on.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much. Being here in person is beautiful with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.